Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw and tonight I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports COVID 2, Keith Jackson and Scott McDermott. Guys, how's it going?
Well, I'm in self-isolation in the studio, as you can see. Scott's obviously not leaving the house. It's, interesting.
Been better.
The Tartan Army variant, great.
This is what 3 days cozying up to each other in Athens does, Daniel.
What, you saying we both come back with a dose?
Sharing a room was one thing, but I think the single bed between the two was a step.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
I was going to say, look, I don't want to start any rumours, but listen, Exhibit A speaks for itself.
Yeah, we'll need to speak to the travel agents next time, Scott. We can't make that mistake again.
No.
But I'm glad. Listen, I'm just delighted that he's made it to the Hotline Live. He's never let the hotline down. Of course not.
Aye, well, come back this time 24 hours, it might be hotline dead.
We've already provisionally booked the crematorium, so join us tomorrow for that. I think there's only one
By the way,
place...
since when did stomach cramps become a thing? Because I'm feeling really bad, right, lousy, struggling to breathe, head cold, not where you can't hear properly because your ears start getting blocked up, everything's blocked. Then you start getting the shivers, and that's great as well. Then you get sweaty and then shivery, and that's a great combination. And then from nowhere, when you're trying to sleep, you start getting stomach cramps. This is a belter. Whatever this Tartan Army variant is, it's honestly, they want to send it to a lab. There could be a problem here. This is something that's not been unleashed in the rest of the world.
You sure the stomach cramps aren't they just for a bad curry, Jacko? No? Dodgy curry?
I'd love to say that might be true, Scott, but I was doing the home cooking last night and it was impeccable as usual, so no issues there.
You might have been a visit to Gianni's that's maybe set you off if he's watching. But
I would love to blame Gianni for it, but I've not been at his place for a week or so, no, can't blame him either.
That's a shame.
I know who's to blame.
The Tartan Army?
Well, yeah, but there's a couple of people in the plane in particular that I was wary of, let's just say, and they were a bit too close to comfort.
We'll maybe leave that there.
A barrage of Tartan Army messages coming in, Daniel.
The two guys that I'm talking about, they know who they are.
Excellent.
And I'm no one of them.
Well, look, maybe we should...
Sorry about that. I feel as if we've stalled the kind of introduction there, Daniel.
Well, let's go into football. And the only place for us to start, I think, tonight is Ibrox, as we often do, because Rangers have issued a statement tonight, Keith, in regards to...
Talking about fans.
Aye, talking about fans, I know. In regards to charges that have been handed out by UEFA. So Rangers have been given by UEFA a suspended partial stadium closure after fans displayed what UEFA's described as, quotes, a racist and or discriminatory banner against Fenerbahce. Now, I mean, that's the banner you can see on your screen there. I'll read out the Rangers statement in a little minute, but comes probably no surprise that a lot of Rangers fans are a bit miffed. Hamish says, please tell me what is racist about the banner. Nobody seems to know. Stephen Ward says, if banner doesn't mention a race, how can it be racist? Keith, what's your take on it?
I think maybe the suspension is for bad grammar or for a banner which nobody actually can understand. I don't know what that means.
Aye.
And I'm not going to defend Rangers supporters on it, even though I don't know what it means. What I will say is, where are we in the world now? Are you not allowed to be anti-woke? Is that a punishable offence? And what was the other bit? Defend Europe. Well, isn't that what every government in Western Europe is trying to do right now? Defend Europe in the face. So you can put that all forward, but the bottom line is why they're doing it. The use of the word foreign in there, that would insinuate that, there's some sort of discriminatory element to it. I guess the use of the word woke, but, that one's a kind of a difficult issue, isn't it?
Right.
There'll be a lot of people out there that would not have a problem with somebody taking a stance against woke. But the bottom line is, And this is where I've got, I'm getting to the issue here in a kind of long-winded way. There is so much previous that Rangers could have picked on their own supporters for, in terms of really vile behaviour, in terms of really inflammatory, racist, sectarian, hesitate to use the word racist, certainly sectarian, messaging, slogans, chants. And they've gone in with both feet on this one. I think it's probably because they know that UEFA are, holding a gun to their head effectively. This is a big punishment that's now hanging over them for the next 2 years. The Copeland Road, an entire shutdown for a European tie. Not only is that huge in terms of financial costs and implications, but also reputationally. How bad does that look?
Yeah.
And this all comes at a time, and this is where the Rangers supporters, and you wonder, what are they thinking? Are they thinking at all? They do realise, don't they, that the San Francisco 49ers are involved in a potential takeover of the football club. You think that's clear by now, surely. Now, the San Francisco 49ers, in terms of PR and, global appeal, are they almost toying? Are they almost trying to poke them with a stick? Because, there might be people within that organisation who would look at something like that and say, wait a minute, this is a ban for what? Racism. The football authorities in Europe are charging them with being racist, and we're about to spend how much on this? I think that's an incredibly stupid set of circumstances that they have managed to create for themselves. Now, I applaud the Rangers statement. I wonder what the motivation is, because I've seen so much being allowed to slide that doesn't seem to take or receive this level of treatment. I think it's the appropriate level of treatment, I have to say that. But why wait until UEFA are threatening this sort of stuff? Rangers should have been doing this a long time ago. They should be telling their supporters, look, whatever it is, guys, leave it at the door. However you feel, however you want to conduct your life, whatever belief system you want to employ, however you want to go about your social stuff outside of this football stadium, well, do you know what? There is no control over that. But see, when you come in through the doors, try and behave that as if the club matters to you. And we've seen the same, and it's almost as if they're almost trying to copy, and this is the possibly the thing that will embarrass some Rangers fans the most. It's almost as if they're trying to be the Rangers version of the Green Brigade, because it's the Green Brigade that brought the politics into Celtic Park and have done over many years. And I think there was a big element of Rangers fans that were probably quite happy. Look at them, they've got their club in trouble again. And now this section, and we'll keep coming back to it, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to risk a heavy reaction, but I keep coming back to this ultras culture where they just seem hell-bent on causing offence wherever they can. If that means hurting their own club, so be it. If it means hurting their own supporters, well, we don't really care. We'll do what we want when we want. And that I've gone on about it previously. How many examples do you need? Just behave yourselves. Just go to the game, support your football club, behave yourself like a grown-up. I don't really think that's too much to ask for. And I would be very curious to see, we've already talked about this, the pyrotechnic stuff that's now going to cost 500 tickets. 500 fans won't get into the next League Cup semi-final next season if Rangers get there. I think Rangers have been quite cute with that because they've made it clear it's the fans that have caused the problem. They're the ones that won't get the tickets. I find that interesting because how is it if you know who they are? Why are they still there? How are they still managing to congregate in certain sections of away stadiums and moving other people out the road? It's just, I think both clubs and clubs in general, by the way, they've created a monster with this ultra stuff. And you know what? The monster needs to get fed. And the bigger it gets, the more problems it causes. And both clubs and other clubs around the country, they're all going down this same road. I'm not saying that one group are as bad as the other, but I think especially with this relationship between Rangers and Celtic, it's almost like, right, if you think that you can be that offensive, well, we'll just take that up a notch. And we'll be even more offensive, and we'll use even more pyrotechnics.
Schoolboy stuff, isn't it?
It's honestly, it's depressing. And as I said, I think that the central message here is, well, not only might they run the risk now, or they do run the risk, and do you think this section of supporters are going to behave themselves for 2 years? I find it highly unlikely. So you've got a situation where, in all probability, the Colton Road stand will have to get shut down for a European tie. At a point in time, if it's not this season, then it's maybe when Andrew Kavanagh is in charge with the 49ers. If, you know, and in the worst case scenario, what if somebody at the 49ers says, look, do we really want to plough on with this? Is this the reputation? Because there's reputational damage, and nobody cares more about that sort of stuff than the high-end American companies, big global corporations. They don't need it.
You mentioned, Keith, the Rangers statement. Before I bring you in, Scott, let me give you a little flavour of what Rangers have said. It reads, the punishment must serve as a severe and significant reminder to the small minority of supporters who bring the name of Rangers into disrepute. Any repeat of any discriminatory behaviour, and this also includes the singing of illicit songs, may result in the famed Rangers end of their home being closed for a UEFA match. So, I mean, they have come down strong. I mean, we're getting a lot of comments on this, as you might, you probably expect. What's your take on it, Scott?
I don't know how to top what Keith just said, to be honest, because I completely agree with everything that he's said. I mean, I do find it interesting, that statement, because it seems different. It seems quite significant. I think the strength of language used in it, it's almost like, or it feels like the club are now targeting that specific fans group, which hasn't really happened before, to my knowledge.
Well, it has, Scott. Remember there was protests, the protested against the board. It was something about they couldn't get their banners, and that was going back a couple of seasons, and then they had the walkout against the board earlier this season. So there has been a sort of running feud a little bit between, but again, that's part of the culture, isn't it? The ultras culture, that they like to rebel against authority. I
just don't think the clubs went for them in this manner before. And it feels like a change. I think before, it's the same with Green Brigade at Celtic. The club are always reluctant, to get into a fight with them, because they know that they're the group that's there every week. They're the group that supposedly bring the atmosphere, and they're the ones that are probably more vocal than the rest. So that the clubs are always a bit cagey with stuff like that. But I think this is slightly different. It follows on for the previous banners or pyrotechnics or whatever. But I think the key thing is what Jacko said. I wonder, is the reason they are being so strong and they are now targeting them is because of the takeover, because they can't risk this kind of stuff going forward. They need to try and somehow get it weeded out as quickly as possible. And I do agree as well with Jacko in terms of that particular fans group. It's quite sad, actually. It does seem like, I think years ago, the Union Bears, when they first started, from memory, it didn't seem like they got involved in the political side of things. No, it was more about noise, atmosphere.
Making a positive contribution.
Aye. Do you know what I mean? It felt different to the Green Brigade. But as usual, I think with a lot of these ultras groups, they start to get a bit of a hit for themselves. They start to, get lost in their own kind of self-importance. And I think that's happened here. And, Jacko's talking about the banner. I mean, I don't really get what it means or what the purpose of it was either. I mean, it was completely unnecessary. And to risk getting a stand closed and to cost your club money for something as stupid and as unnecessary as that, it's just mind-blowing, really.
Well, I mean, on that, Keith, let me throw some of these comments at you. Tommy follows up what Scott says by saying, a message no one understands is offensive.
That's a difficult one. I'd like, by the way, and that is one thing, and I'm not taking their side on it, but I would like to ask the question to Rangers, explain what's racist.
Aye.
Is it the use of the word foreigner, foreign ideology? Does that constitute racism? Because I think that's questionable. And as I said to you, there have been far more obvious things for Rangers to jump on than this. It was a horribly, clumsily worded, clunky statement, which to me, I didn't understand what it meant.
It read like something Andrew Tate would tweet You know what I mean? It was just so vague, and I mean, Rangers Easy OK says it well. That section of the fans do so much good at Ibrox, but the banner was a complete word salad. No direct message, no explanation of who it was directed to. Keep politics out of Ibrox. That's what that lot do. Craigie follows up. Completely agree, Keith. Both Rangers and Celtic should be kicking the Union Bears and Green Brigade out of their stadiums. They both bring nothing but trouble to both clubs, plus dangers to supporters with pyros, etc. However, Hoopsaholic says it's a working class game.
So what? What does that mean? What does that mean?
He actually follows it up by saying we have to. I can't find the comment now though. He says that we have to keep. Here we go. Politics was always in Celtic Park and Ibrox. The shipyard unions recruited. There you go.
The other thing,
and that just shows you that this is an argument that the clubs will find impossible to win, because there are people like that says, nah, we don't care what it means, what the repercussions are, because we just want to do it. We're entitled, and we'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just on the statement, Jacko. No, and I'm not. This is not defending the fans in any way. I did find it slightly ironic that the club or the board lamenting the possibility of getting a stand closed at Ibrox.
As if this would be the biggest disaster to ever have happened.
Because it might cost the team. This is the same club that couldn't
open the stand.
The club ended up getting out of the Champions League because
I did see that irony, Scott. I knew where you were going with that.
Aye. That's quite funny, actually. That hadn't occurred to me.
This absolutely catastrophic event. We might not have to play in front of only 3 stands,
exactly.
Guys.
The team is going to suffer because one of the stands is closed, as opposed to having to flip to Hampden for a Champions League.
Mark Fairfield says political slogans will never be banned, quite rightly so. There has to be free speech. If it stops, it's a slippery slope. We are allowed to comment on injustice. I mean, I would come back to...
You're just concentrating on football.
And what injustice was that? You know, were they complaining about the other night? Just bizarre.
Nobody knows, because nobody can explain to me what it actually meant. Who it was targeted at, what the meaning was, what its purpose was. And I'll tell you another thing about these Ultras group, right? Well, we started.
Well, we're on it.
No, well, people, and I keep hearing this thing, but they create such an atmosphere. They bring an atmosphere to match day. Do you know what? I don't know. You know, Daniel, you're obviously a bit younger, Scotty. See, back in the day, you didn't need a specific corner of section of the ground to create an atmosphere. Right. To me, these people have stolen the atmosphere. They've made it as if, well, this is what we do. And it's almost as if everybody else just sits back and says, well, I'll let them. They've got their song sheet. And by the way, the song sheet doesn't deviate. It doesn't matter what the game, you know, their team could be getting beaten 3-0. The song sheet stays the same. They don't react to the game. And everybody else just sits there and says, well, that's actually their job now to create that. When did that happen? And how did it happen? Because for me, that's not to the betterment of the Scottish game. I think it's the opposite.
I totally agree, Jack. These groups seem to have this ego now where it's like, I mean, if we're not there, I mean, what you're going to do?
Exactly. Oh, that's your match day experience finished.
What kind of atmospheres they're going to be? Football's been going on for hundreds of years with people singing and cheering at football games without these groups. No, I grew up watching football for feels like the first kind of 20, 25 years of my life when an atmosphere depended on how a game went. Yep. No, if your team was doing well, there's a great atmosphere. If no, even sometimes when your team's not doing well, it can create a brilliant atmosphere because there's that act of defiance. No, at Ibrox and Parkhead, atmosphere was never a big issue. Problem.
They've been regarded as iconic stadiums, 100 years before these groups
and it wasn't the Green Brigade or the Union Bears who made that happen.
No.
Do you think a big Champions League game at Celtic Park
would be any less?
Would be all quiet if the Green Brigade weren't there?
Nah,
it's just ludicrous.
No, I know I'm meant to be a bit younger. I took a bit of stick on the pyros about this the other day as well. I mean, you were saying, Keith, that well, you hated it. It might look good. I don't even think it looks good. I just don't. It's just like schoolboy stuff that you said. You're going to be hard, right? We're harder. We can get in more trouble.
It's pathetic.
A pain in the back.
It's pathetic, and they're running about the city centre of Glasgow having pitch battles in front of women and children, doing Christmas shopping. It's embarrassing. These people are an embarrassment. And, you know, if it takes something for football clubs to get their head around it, or football authorities, for people to realise, look, this is a negative. There's nothing positive coming from this. It's just a succession of negatives.
Rebel says in the comment section, bring back alcohol, that'll get the atmosphere and singing going. That's perhaps a discussion for another day.
I bring back alcohol into the cocaine section. Good idea.
It's maybe worth mentioning.
Certainly gets the thing going.
Aye, it would get the thing going, that's for sure. It's worth mentioning Celtic also hit with a fine as well for a late kick-off. I don't know, is it Brendan Rodgers, Keith, that gets that directly?
Yeah, that was Brendan as part of, I think he was in the Green Brigade end. I don't know what happened there. I think Celtic were obviously late coming back out onto the pitch for the second half, and that's the heinous crime of the slight delay for the live broadcast, which is punishable by death. So Brendan's done quite well. He's got away with that. Just a one-match suspension there.
That is ridiculous. Some of these fines, I mean, it's no wonder UEFA are absolutely caked in money. Do you know what I mean?
I know. Well, look, if I can maybe steer this back towards actual football, let me throw this comment at you.
Please do. I think we've got ourselves into quite enough trouble.
Peter Cooper-White says, I see Rangers player Nico Raskin's name player of the match. He's talking about for Belgium against Ukraine the other night. If Arne Engels is worth £11 million and can't even make the bench for Belgium, what's Raskin's value? And getting a standing ovation when sub. Chris Lowe follows up with usual cheerleaders and never slow to talk up Celtic players with tales of 30 million rated are strangely quiet on Raskin. He's a player who's been immense in this, and his team storming to the last day of a European tournament. Man of the match in a Belgian team littered with stars, and not forgetting scoring and running the show at the home of the Gallowgate Globetrotters recently. 30 million for Raskin, you having that?
I don't know about 30 million, but it's fair comment, Daniel, in terms of his current form or his recent form, and I think you need to put a lot of that down to Barry Ferguson, if I'm being honest, and the differences he's made in the last few games. I mean, I watched some of the highlights of the Belgium game the other night. You know, he started in a massive game against Ukraine. Belgium are 2 down for the first leg, had to go and win. They get the job done, 3-0. Lukaku scored twice. And he's in a midfield with Kevin De Bruyne, who we know is a superstar at Man City, and Van Aken, who's the Club Brugge captain, who I watched at Celtic Park earlier this season. He was fantastic that night. And the biggest compliment you can pay Raskin is that he didn't look, he looked comfortable in that kind of company. And he didn't. It wasn't as if he was the first sub or get taken off after an hour. 89 minutes. He played as a sitting midfielder for Belgium, and the guy who wrote in's right. He got a standing ovation for the crowd when he went off. That's a massive moment, I think, for Raskin, getting that first start and impressing. As I say, it's off the back of a brilliant performance at Celtic Park. I mean, he was the man of the match by a country mile, I think.
Good couple of games against Fenerbahce.
Aye, I mean, brilliant ball obviously against Fenerbahce for Cherny's goal in Turkey. But the Celtic game was key for him because he's been pigeonholed a wee bit as a kind of sitting midfielder, number 6, and that's all he can do, break up play and tackle and get in about people. I thought Celtic Park, he showed that, but he showed another side to his game as well. He can actually make forward passes. He can make forward runs. He actually drifted off the back of Arne Engels. We had a great run for Rangers' second goal. We flick it on to Diomande. That's after he'd opened the scoring himself with a brilliant header. So, no, he's in brilliant form. And the reason I talk about Barry Ferguson is that I don't think that Belgium call-up or this kind of form was on the cards under Philippe Clement. It certainly didn't look that way. And I just wonder, it'd be interesting to know from Barry Ferguson what kind of direct influence he's had on him. Obviously, he was a top-class central midfielder, so you'd expect him to be dealing with him one-to-one and trying to make him better. And listen, it's still early days, obviously, for Ferguson and Raskin, I suppose, but I think he's made a huge impact on him, and Raskin's now reaping the benefits.
Craigie says in the comment section, the next manager needs to build the team around him. Hopefully contract extension on the way for him too. Darren's getting excited, saying Raskin's an outstanding player. World class and really young. But Mark Fairfield counters it by saying Raskin's played well for what, 4 or 6 weeks? A wee bit longer than that, I think, to be fair, Keith.
He's a good player. He's a good player, and I said last night that I do think he's benefiting from having Barry Ferguson around. I think the two of them have had a series of sort of one-to-ones. And I think that Nico Raskin had an idea about how he wanted to play, and I get the feeling that there's been a bit of mentoring there, and it's just little things. It's nothing major. It's just your body shape when you want to receive the ball in that area of the pitch. Where do you go? What do you look to do with it? Just little things that sharpen them up, and I've seen that difference in him. And I would go further than that, Scott, to say that's been one of the major problems that Rangers have had since Clement went into the club. I believe, it's my understanding, there hasn't been any one-to-one coaching at any point. And I think the players in there over the last 3-4 weeks, whatever it's been, I think they've really enjoyed the fact that there's guys out there that are trying to improve them, that they're taking on their advice and they're realising, this guy knows what he's talking about because it's made me better at the weekend, or it's made me better in that training session. And I think it's actually a little short of criminal, because we've talked, how many nights have we talked on here about Brendan Rodgers and his ability to, as a coach, to make a player better, to improve him, to take aspects of his game that can, that are maybe 20% lower than where they can be, and to raise them. And he does that because he's a training field coach, and he knows, just by looking at somebody, he knows what advice to give them to make them come on leaps and bounds. And I think for the first time, and I think it's a joke actually, that Rangers had a coaching staff there and players weren't getting one-to-ones after training. Simple things, I believe, like Conor Barron, who didn't get an instant, wasn't automatically put into the starting 11 when Barry Ferguson went in there. But I believe boys like Conor Barron and Bailey Rice are benefiting from very similar stuff. Just staying on a little bit later, working on the finer details, the things that will take you from that level to that level. Mm-hmm. And I think Rangers are benefiting from it, not just Raskin. Of course they are. How wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. If you've got guys with the expertise of the Rangers coaching staff that have come in, of course you're going to benefit if they're telling you, if you're prepared to take on information, if you're prepared not to think that you know it all already, but that these guys might be able to make you better. I think all football players, all professional football players, go to their work hoping that they can improve themselves, that they can get better, that somebody can teach them how to do that. And I think, from what I hear, I think that the players in it, Auchenhowie just now, are really benefiting from and enjoying that aspect, which is completely new.
The bigger picture, Daniel, of course, we're asking is, people are throwing numbers about there, and we can kind of laugh about it or whatever, talk about different values and stuff, talk about Engels, 11 million. The bigger picture is Rangers are desperate to have a player trading model that earns them serious money. And when you look at the profile of their players, Raskin at 24, as a Belgian international, if he can cement a place in that squad, in that team, then Rangers are then looking at somebody with serious value. As long as he keeps improving, as long as he keeps getting better, as long as he stays fit. I think he's got 2 years left in his contract. And I'm not sure
this summer a big one then, Scott, really, doesn't it?
It does. And with the takeover and everything as well, it's going to be a fascinating summer. I mean, not just with Americans coming in, but decisions like this. Are they already, are there people behind the scenes already looking at this and looking at Raskin with 2 years left? What do they do? Do they sign him up on a longer term deal, protect their asset, see him as a key player going forward in the next couple of years for what they want to achieve? Or do they say, let's cash in now, let's do it Celtic have done with a number of players, and when they reach a kind of optimum value, they go and cash in and sell him, and that would probably need to be this summer. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him.
Our pal Gianni, he says Leeds could buy him and fund the next Rangers transfer window.
It's taken a while, Johnny, but that's a good point.
We finally got there.
That is a good point.
Aye,
You know,
aye.
who knows how this model is going to work
Aye.
in terms of the relationship, because the clubs that put themselves under one umbrella, we've seen it with guys for Brighton going to Union Saint-Gilloise, and on to Hearts. It's not feeder club stuff, but it's having a relationship. And if Raskin feels that he wants to play, if he's desperate in a hurry to get to the English Premier League, and if Leeds can finish off the job and actually get there over the next few weeks, that might be a solution. And that's one of the benefits of the relationships that Rangers are about to get involved in here. You know, and why it's so important that nobody does anything that scares off the horses between now and completion.
Aye. Let me throw this comment at you. Stephen says Celtic need to hope Schmeichel is okay. The drop-off in talent backing him up is startling. Or I think he means lack of talent backing him up. But even so, we talked about it a bit last night, Keith, but Kasper Schmeichel, we understand his injury is a little bit worse than first feared.
Yeah.
And if he is out, that is a big blow to Celtic.
Well, it's the sort of news we were saying that Celtic would have been dreading, you know, this time last night, Daniel. But I kind of felt it looked fairly inevitable. I think it looked like he'd, you know, done himself a bit of a bad one there, and by staying on the pitch, even though it's just the best of intentions, and because he's such a patriot and such a professional, that he just simply wasn't prepared to leave his team in the lurch, so he stayed out there. But he's done whatever damage was done, it'll have worsened over that period on the park. And as we said again last night, you know, it's one thing getting a bad one when you're 22, 23. The recovery time is shorter than it is when you're in your 30s. As fit as Kasper Schmeichel is, and he looks as fit as a fiddle to me, the body takes just that little bit longer. So that will be a concern. It's not going to change. I don't think. Look, if Celtic are obviously going for a domestic treble, and you want your best goalkeeper for that, but I don't think it undermines them to the extent that you would have significant worries about Celtic finishing off that job. I still think that Celtic, you know, I've said it already, I still think Celtic will win the domestic treble. Now, whether that's Kasper Schmeichel in goals or not, but I do take the point. I would cut Celtic a bit of slack there. They've had a brilliant goalkeeper in Joe Hart, and they've replaced him with one that's possibly, I would argue, an upgrade.
Aye.
You can't have a guy that's almost just as good as that sitting on the bench every week. So, yeah, is it a problem? Yeah. Is it a nightmarish scenario at this point in the season? No, not really. Celtic, nice big lead at the top. They've already got one trophy in the bag, and I fully expect them to complete the set.
Darren says, will Kasper miss Celtic's Champions League knockout games? Comedy gold from Darren. He's on form tonight. Elsewhere, Scott, Neil Lennon is back in management at Dunfermline Athletic.
Yep.
Is it the right appointment, do you think?
I think it's the right appointment for Dunfermline. I think it's a bit of almost a coup for Dunfermline to get Neil Lennon in. I was slightly surprised that he's obviously went to a club who are toiling in the Championship. But by the same token, no, he's no daft. He knows that that's a big club there, and he knows there's potential for growth and progression, obviously up the Championship and eventually into the Premiership, because knowing Neil Lennon as I do, there's no way he would have taken that job if he didn't think for a minute that there was a chance of A, getting them up, and B, actually going and competing in the top flight, because that's where he wants to operate. That's where he's operated before. And obviously there's new owners in there. I don't know them. I don't know what what the kind of ambitions are or the plans are, but he seems to have been quite impressed with him when he's went and met them.
Well, he made a point of saying that, didn't he, Scott? He said that Sir Alex Ferguson said to him, you know, it's better to pick an owner than to pick a club.
Yeah.
When you're looking at getting back into the workforce, and you know whether or not you can afford to be that picky, I don't know, because he's obviously had to go down a level here. But yeah. I believe him when he says, you know, I think he's spoken to these people and he likes what he's hearing.
Yeah.
They're obviously second bottom in the Championship table. 2 points behind Hamilton with a game in hand. First game, obviously, at the weekend is against Ayr United and Scott Brown. Do you think it'll work out for him, Keith? Do you think he'll do well now?
Let's see. I hope so. He's certainly, as Scotty said, I think it's a real coup for Dunfermline to get a guy with that CV behind him. Mm-hmm. Do you know my worry, if I'm dead honest, is that I would imagine that Americans, might be a lot of sort of data-driven stuff there, and I think that Neil would admit himself that he's one of these guys that, you know, likes to trust his own eyes rather than what the computer's telling him. But I think if he can go in there and make a significant impact, you know, keep them up, and it's been a really testing season for Dunfermline and their fans, then, you know, I think he will come into contention. He was asked today why it's only 7 games, I think, and he said, well, because the season ends in 7 games. And you know what? I wish him all the very best. Scottish football's a more colourful environment with Neil Lennon in it, and you know, I think Dunfermline might have won a watch here in terms of if he can avoid the first target, which is keep them up, and then they sit down, they take a look at the whole structure of the thing over the summer, and they give them a real fighting chance of getting involved. And we've seen in the Championship this season, look at where Ayr United have come from. This time last year, Scott Brown had got in there with the same remit as Neil Lennon. No. Simply keep them up.
Yep.
And you've seen with good ownership and a good relationship and with good coaching skills, mm-hmm. what's achievable in the space of a very short time. So in 12 months, you know, Scott Brown has now got Ayr United into the thick of the argument for promotion to the Premier League. There's absolutely no reason at all. In fact, I'm sure Neil Lennon would fancy his chances. If Scott Brown can do it, then I can do it as well. You know, he has got more coaching experience after all. So, yeah, it'll be really fascinating to see. And as I said, I do think Scottish football's all the better for having Neil Lennon back in employment, because I think he's got a lot to offer. We normally... I'll tell you another thing, actually.
Go on.
Well, it's quite interesting because there was a guy surfaced today, some... I don't know what podcast or something. Les Allen.
This is what I was going to move to. Aye.
Well, he's claiming responsibility for being the guy that put the Rangers takeover together. So I'm reliably informed. He was the guy responsible for putting the Dunfermline takeover together. I don't know if he's getting confused here, but I can. Let's just say. I think he played a big part in the Dunfermline takeover. He played a similar role in the St Johnstone takeover. The part that he's played in Andrew Kavanagh and the San Francisco 49ers potential takeover at Rangers, I'm sorry, but he's not even a sort of minority player in this one. But good luck to him. And you know what? Anybody that's been paying close attention to this story since we broke it will know that we're fairly well informed on the matter.
I mean, I wanted to get your take on that, because anyone that saw Les Allen's comments on that today, he would have you believe he was a much more significant player in the Rangers takeover, but that's not the case.
Look, there's no doubt that he knew Andrew Kavanagh, and that he knew Andrew Kavanagh was really actively starting to look at getting involved in European football. And there is no doubt that he was part of the process of connecting this party with that party. Mm-hmm. But that's just about it, as far as my understanding of it is. And it's still a significant part, because I guess one doesn't happen without the other. But to, the kind of screaming headlines that this is the deal maker and all that, it's silly. And, sometimes you'll get around big deals like this, ultimately, wouldn't surprise me if over the course of the next 6 or 7 weeks, you've got guys coming out from everywhere saying, well, I put this one together, I put it together, because obviously, when there's a lot of money floating about, as there will be with this deal, people like the idea of getting involved in it and getting a share or turning a pound out of it. But it's simply not accurate to say that he was a major mover and shaker, and the guy that put the deal together, that's just silly.
Yeah. Before we finish, guys, right, I need to read out this comment because I fear it will finish you off, Keith. This goes back to the stuff we talked about at the top of the show with Rangers' statement and what have you. Randy writes in, he's attacking us all. He says, a trio of simps on this show.
What's a simp?
It's a simp. That's simple.
Is that simpleton?
I think it's someone that accepts being dominated. I think.
Okay.
Trio
Do you accept being dominated, Daniel?
No comment. Upset by people's opinions, but happy clap when it's rainbow laces and the knee to the BLM.
Well, Randy McStab, and it's interesting, McStab.
I know.
But Randy McStab should have been listening. I said at the start of this, I don't have any problem with anybody that wants to be anti-woke. I think that's well within people's rights to decide whether or not they want to, be forced to accept that, the kind of terms and conditions of wokeism. It's personally not really for me. So Randy McStab wasn't listening. All we're saying is, Randy McStab, any chance of behaving yourself like a grown-up? That's it. There's nothing woke about that.
Aye, I think that's a fair point.
Randy McStab.
Who's on here tomorrow night, Daniel? You, Jacko, and Nigel Farage?
Nigel, we're trying to get him. So, on that, actually, Hoopsaholic.
Me, Daniel, and Randy McStab.
Hoopsaholic says the best day in football was 90,000 Celtic and Dundee United fans giving the Thatcher the red card for NHS cuts and prescription charges. It's all going a bit political tonight, guys. Look, I'm out of my depth here.
Aye, I'm out.
Yeah, probably best.
Aye. Well, look, I think that brings us to the end of Tuesday's...
I'll tell you one thing, though, see, before we go.
Of Tuesday's question time.
I'll tell you one thing. Go back to the Ultra thing, because the thought just occurred, and we started this show with me having a bit of a go at the Tartan Army and maybe cleanliness issues, that sort of thing. Two guys in particular. But the Tartan Army don't have an Ultra section.
Aye.
They seem to generate an atmosphere, big match atmosphere at Hampden Park for the big Scotland games. They don't need to be told we're singing that song by that bunch of guys down there. How is it the Tartan Army can generate their own atmosphere in a way that club sides or supporters of club sides used to be able to do years ago? The Tartan Army, they've just got their own sort of way of going about it, and it's reminiscent to me of the way things always used to be. I would hate to think of the day that the Tartan Army will have their own ultras and nobody could sing a song and enjoy themselves at football because that's up to these guys over there to do it. Mm. And I don't know why I just felt I would mention that, but I think Randy McStab's angered me.
Celtic were winning the best fans in the world award off UEFA long before the Green Brigade.
Well, exactly right. What a great point.
Exactly.
So, thanks, Keith. I think it's a great way to end it.
Yeah, well, it's your first one in about 8 months.
First one in a while, aye.
Only 7 games left of this season.
Thanks so much for all the comments in the comment section. If you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do so tomorrow at 6 p.m. when we'll be back to do it all again. Scott, I hope you're feeling better. Hope you make it through the night.
Doubt it.
Cheers, Daniel.
If you feel
I'm
really
going to have Randy McStab at my door.
Just roll over and give each other a wee cuddle. You'll be fine. Thanks for watching at home. Cheers.